Hi, and welcome to another edition of the MSDW podcast. This week is our WPC edition, what came out of Microsoft's Worldwide Partner Conference 2016, what kind of year partners are facing, what adjustments do they need to make for the cloud, and for new initiatives like Dynamics 365, Project Madeira, and AppSource. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor of MSDynamicsWorld.com, and joining me is Dan Morno, assistant editor. Let's begin.
Thanks, Jason. Our first headline was from early in the week. At WPC 2016, Nadella calls for move away from software suites toward role-based apps and services.
All right, so this was the day one keynote from Nadella, which is the same way we began WPC last year, I believe. And, I think he did a good job of setting the stage for some of the things that folks in the Dynamics space were going to learn a lot more about over the next couple of days. A lot more, but perhaps not enough, some people were saying. So he talked about Dynamics 365. He actually led the whole event with Dynamics 365 and some of the ways in which it would really be changing the way business solutions at Microsoft are going to be delivered over the long term. He talked about Project Madeira. He talked about the way in which companies are using some of the technology that Dynamics 365 will eventually encompass. And I think they even took a little bit of a liberty and talked about one customer that was using a Dynamics 365 solution, which I think was a little bit of a stretch, but they're certainly using technology that will become part of the Dynamics 365 platform over time. Things like Power Apps, perhaps, or elements of Power BI, Cortana Intelligence Suite, CRM capabilities of different kinds like field service, Microsoft Flow for triggering alerts, portal features, which may or may not be part of, again, the Dynamics 365. So they were trying to work this idea of this very, very well integrated set of different technologies that are all built to sort of work together nicely. These were demoed together. They were showed off as parts of a case study. So that really did set the tone for the idea that cloud-based business solutions that encompass Dynamics, they encompass Office 365, they encompass Azure, they encompass and some really brand new things like, which I'll mention a little bit more later, but like the common data model are all going to be very much in Microsoft's future.
I think one of the most compelling sentences in it, Jason, and this was a piece you wrote, is that Dynamics 365 is expected to be able to handle a full range of customer sizes, and that its ERP-related capabilities will originate in Madeira and Dynamics AX. So a full range of customer sizes. Well, what does that mean to NAV? What does that mean to GP? What does that mean to SL?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I mean, the Microsoft did speak to that, and their talking point on that, or what they advised partners, was that those products are not going away. They will still have roadmaps, and there's actually a very interesting roadmap slide that shows those products with a roadmap sort of indicated in a sort of a swim lanes, where there are swim lanes with arrows going forward into 2017, 2018 for those products, but there's nothing in those swim lanes. So, it's one of those examples of there are plans, but none of them could be talked about, or maybe they hadn't been formulated well enough yet to be explained to people outside of Microsoft just yet. So, but I mean, I think the ones that will be moving forward with conviction are AX, which plays a huge part in the enterprise component of Dynamics 365, CRM, which plays, again, a main component in the enterprise, and then Project Madeira, which is the financials for the SMB version of Dynamics 365, and we'll get some company, you might say, again at that SMB level with sales, with marketing, with integration of Power Apps and Microsoft Flow later. But it's really going to kind of stand on its own for at first, I guess, as the component of the Dynamics 365 system for SMBs. And they see it as fully as a platform that could appeal to any size company. So if you're up to 250 employees, they said, Madeira is the Dynamics 365 solution for you. It'll be called Dynamics 365 Financials for Business, I believe. And then if you're bigger than 250, they want you looking at the enterprise version with AX playing that role of operations, quote unquote, which is basically all of AX under that title. So that's financials and everything else that AX can do in supply chain and project service and retail and everything else that it does. So it's a pretty big range. I don't think people are sold yet that Project Madeira can be that thing. And if it's not, GP, NAV, SL are still there. there. I mean, they're definitely not going away. It's really more a question of how far they're going and how well they'll advance beyond where they're at today.
Well, enterprise has seen the mythical one-size-fits-all unicorn before, and they're necessarily certainly cautious about it. They'll believe it when they see it, I think. But it appears to me that this is real. This is not. I've heard of these unicorns over the years, and yet this one I believe in, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's going for it, obviously, is that most of the software already exists, and that goes as far as saying the common data model idea. It does exist in some form already, although Microsoft hasn't made it public. I mean, there's a blog post that from the Power Apps team, because they're one of the the key consumers of that common data model, and it's by the way some of the things they've been saying, they're testing it, they're using it, they're putting millions of records through it already in some kind of a prototype or sort of development mode. So I mean, there's apparently something there already. And then of course you have CRM, you have AX, you have Madeira, which people can touch and feel and play with already in a preview mode. So it's not like vaporware by any means. The only thing that really doesn't exist yet is the sale in really any way is the sales and marketing components of the SMB version. No one really got clear confirmation on what that is going to look like. Is it going to be actual Dynamics CRM stripped down? Is it going to be some kind of new thing that they build up with very limited capabilities? I don't know yet.
That's a natural transition to our next piece, which was Microsoft reveals Dynamics 365 license details, clarifying the future of AX, CRM, and Project Madeira. Here, the subtitle was Partners Pack WPC sessions on Dynamics 365 licensing and packaging plans, but plenty of questions remain around pricing and more.
Yeah, this was definitely the most well-read piece that came out of WPC for MSDW anyway. And this was the thing everyone wanted to know, and they kind of faltered on the sort of conference room planning side of things. They put this in a room that was just a little too small, and not everyone could get into these 2 sessions on this topic who really wanted to, especially the second one. They really messed up and put it in a very small room with like 5, round conference tables in it, so about only 40 people could fit in, 40 or 50 people could fit in the room before they reached the fire code limits. So there were dozens and dozens of people waiting in this little hallway trying to get in who couldn't, and this was where they really shared a lot of the primary information. Now they did have time after, like kind of office hours for the licensing specialists from Microsoft to take people's questions afterwards. So I think a lot of people did get their questions answered, but it was that was the thing they probably should have given the biggest space to, because this is what everyone wanted to know about. And they only got part of the answer. They got the conceptual, which was sort of how the licensing will be structured, what the offering will kind of look like in terms of its component pieces, and to an extent how the pricing will be sort of formulated, I guess you would say. They wouldn't say a word about actual prices, which was the thing that people really needed if you were a partner to make sure that you can make a decision about what you think about this. So yeah, no pricing, no price information shared yet. It obviously will be coming sometime in the future. Lots of theories out there, and especially for the SMB side, people want to know how much is Madeira going to cost, and there's a lot of opinions out there. I could just say a couple words about what that structure is for the Dynamics 365. So it's really kind of 3 components. There are apps, and those are sort of the functional components. So like for the enterprise side, CRM is going to become 5 apps: sales, marketing, customer service, field service, and project service automation. And that's, best as I understand it, mostly encompassing the capabilities of core Dynamics CRM Online now, plus the existing field service and project service automation that they recently launched, kind of as separate add-ons already. And then there's an operations app, which is essentially AX, AX7, the new AX on Azure. And then it also includes apps for Microsoft Flow and Power Apps, which we consider an app as part of the packaging. And so you can actually buy those apps individually, or there's 2 plans you can buy where you get access to all of the apps it's kind of like with or without operations. So, but they both include Power Apps and Flow. They both include all of the customer experience apps. And it seems pretty clear they're going to try to push people toward plans, especially if you're sort of a CRM Online customer now. The idea that you would go from CRM Online to just one app out of all of those. I'm going to guess that's not going to be incentivized, let's say. But again, they wouldn't give any indication on what that actually will look like. It's much simpler on the business SMB side for now. There's only Madeira right now. Then the other thing that people did actually seem to respond well to was the notion of the team member concept, and that's essentially like a light user concept that's, I would say, a little more open, a little more simplified, and maybe a little more generous in what it does than in the past. So the idea is that there's this team member access, which means you basically can give people access to read access to basically everything with really, they're kind of not putting any limitations on it is how they explained it. So that can be purchased just for read access for people who really don't need any other access. And then it's also being given to, if you have access to at least one app, you then have team member access or read access to every other app that is being essentially purchased by your company in some way. So if there's people who have a plan and then there's some people who have only access to one app, people with access to one app still get access at the team member level to everything else. I don't know if that makes sense saying it, but there were lots of diagrams, nevertheless, needless to say, lots of arrows and grids and checkboxes and stuff to help explain that. And I'm sure Microsoft will be doing lots and lots of briefings on this over the next weeks and months with partners so they understand the structure of it, and then somewhere down the line how that'll all be priced too. But yeah, people were eager to understand this because it also really does help inform what are these what is Dynamics 365, what does it look like, how is it going to be sold, what are people actually going to be buying, and so I think people got something out of that, but not sort of everything. They absorbed it and then they said, okay, great, well, until we know the pricing, that's all well and good.
Is it your understanding that a team member license will be of a lesser cost? I mean, it seems to me like you're not getting a full seat. You are getting a little three-legged cow milking stool.
Yeah, exactly. It's there are already light user. I might be getting the terminology wrong. There are already like sort of light user access rights in Dynamics products now, and that gives sort of different kinds of read access. It also might give a very light write access, like they keep using the example of time and expense. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a lower cost, and it's also tiered, which they made kind of a big deal about. So the higher volume you go on team member licenses, the lower the cost, and then there's formulas for how those costs get reduced, and as you add more seats, how costs go down at time of renewal. So there's all this sort of lower level stuff involved there. But I think the thing I took away from the team member wasn't that it existed, because it's kind of always been some type of light user, lower cost light user, but that they're making it a little more common sense.
Next up, Microsoft urges ISVs toward AppSource, noting range of current and future opportunities. Here our subhead was, AppSource will help ISVs list their solutions, but it provides other less obvious benefits, Microsoft officials advise at WPC.
Yeah, so AppSource is another thing that everyone has probably heard about. You can go out and sort of look at it as a web site, I guess you'd say, and you can take a look at the things out there. Microsoft made a big point of getting at least 200 listings into it before WPC, which was probably a great idea. I think 100 different companies and 200 listings. And they have a lot of plans for this. I mean, this really does tie into not only Dynamics 365, but Office 365, Azure, other, third-party solutions built on Azure, I guess, as well as Power BI, Azure IoT. So they really have sort of a grand vision of AppSource, and actually I think ties into the idea of the application platform, the common data model plans that are still sort of brewing and are perhaps some of the most intriguing things that are in this whole sort of plan for this next generation of business applications. But yeah, other than being a listing and if someone clicks on it and asks for a trial, that person obviously becomes a lead for these vendors. But the thing Microsoft was stressing at the event was it's not just a way to get a few new leads by people who kind of wander onto the site. It'll be built into the products. Again, still not, they weren't promising that would generate a ton of leads, but this sort of more strategic advice was this gets you visibility at Microsoft. This gets you into deals where maybe the the Microsoft sales rep or the partner sales rep was putting a solution together and finds you and makes you a part of that effort. Sales motion was a term that I think it really caught fire inside of Microsoft at some point between last year and this year, and so everything was about motion, getting involved in the sales motion, and then they extended it to other kinds of motions. But you just heard that over and over, and they were trying to entice ISVs to tap into those motions and understand them.
Interesting, if in case anybody out there is sneering, well, we already have a Salesforce AppExchange. Well, this is no coincidence. Actually, this was introduced this week by Ron Huddleston, who's Microsoft's new leader of ISV and channel. And he hails from Salesforce, where he was largely credited with launching and evolutionizing the Salesforce AppExchange, among other tasks. And sort of like that, no, actually, I don't know. This may actually exceed the AppExchange capabilities or requirements. Solutions in the AppSource must offer a free trial and support, and they also must commit to a 99.9 SLA. So the stakes are high.
Yeah, Microsoft's trying to set the bar high. Everything's going to be curated. Obviously, I mean, I think it's fairly easy to get into the application process to submit a listing, but I think it remains to be seen now that they're really actively promoting it and trying to drive up the number of listings, how quickly they can turn those around, how quickly vendors are going to be ready to submit them. But I think people got the message that you probably want to be there in some way, shape, or form with your offering, whether it's a small widget or something more significant. I think that's really where I'm interested to see. It's like, how big can the solutions be in this in AppSource? Where, like you mentioned, Salesforce and you'll see sort of fully baked enterprise systems in that, not just sort of add-ons to Salesforce. Will we start seeing that in AppSource the way you see it in Salesforce AppExchange? And having like you said, Ron Huddleston join the company, who I hadn't known was now a part of it, and his view coming from Salesforce, I think, will be significant. I think he understands the idea of app markets and has also, I think, taken a pretty close look at where Microsoft's at already from the way he was talking at the event. He did speak a couple times, a little bit, at least once with sort of a formal presentation. I actually caught him once sort of talking a little more off the cuff about some of his ideas about what's going to be going on.
Okay.
So yeah, I think he's a very interesting person to have joined onto this. I don't know that he originated AppSource. I don't believe he did, but I think to have him kind of responsible for it, or responsible for the ISVs and the channel is going to be building for it is an interesting development and probably a good pickup for Microsoft.
Next up, we have Microsoft guides partners on cloud direction and why to get oriented. This is a recap of Day 2's keynote, where Microsoft built a strong case on cloud payments and committed a slew of new resources, and it signals a kind of a tipping point, I think. It was long on promised results, and Scott Guthrie, Microsoft's EVP of Cloud and Enterprise, began the presentation under a huge banner reading simply, "Journey to the Cloud," in case you weren't clear that that's the direction. He went on to quote some startling stats, among them that Microsoft offers 34 unique Azure regions worldwide, more than Google or AWS combined, that 85% of the Fortune 500 is on the Microsoft cloud, including giants like Johnson Controls and Walmart. Now, presumably on the cloud means maybe they have CRM online or some module, but still. And I think the most interesting point was that he used a graphic which he called the journey to the cloud, and it had 5 steps to it. And listening carefully to what's on it. Number 1 was productivity with Office 365. Number 2 was business applications, and there was one entry there, Dynamics 365. Third was application innovation on Azure. Fourth was data intelligence with Cortana Intelligence. And fifth was security management, being enterprise mobility and security operations management. So new Dynamics 365 made the cut, and Dynamics Nav, GP, CP and SL, they're not accounted for here, but we know that the cloud viability of those solutions is going to vary over time. Now, in the rest was frankly, there was one interesting point. Guthrie depicted on a slide the how the CSPs are faring, or what they're seeing from their unique licensing, and they're seeing Guthrie claims 2 times revenue growth, 1.8 times recurring revenue, greater than 65% SaaS profit margins. So I couldn't tell from the presentation if this is the average or these are the outliers, but those are fairly impressive figures. So the rest of the morning went on to a lot of rah-rah stuff and case studies. And then Gabriela Schuster took the stage. She's the newly minted corporate vice president for Microsoft's worldwide partner group, and she's taking over from Phil Sorgen. And she went on to describe exactly how Microsoft is going to be supporting the partners in the coming year. And there were a few interesting things here. One is a competency logo builder. This may not sound like much, but the updated competency badges for gold partners will include the Microsoft logo as an endorsement. That to me is significant. Next up is updated partner branding. Here, the aim is to better grab customer attention in the fast-paced digital environment. And here, Microsoft is claiming it's simplified the application certification process to enable more partners to become certified. Third was a doubling in investment in free software, cloud services, and platforms for partners via internal use rights. Here, the idea is Microsoft is going to double its investment in free software, cloud services, and platforms for partners over the next year, giving them the tools they need to build innovative solutions on top of Microsoft technologies. So when partners use IURs, their deals supposedly are approximately 3 times larger. So that was interesting. Among other enhancements aimed at CSPs is a partner center software development kit. Thus, CSPs can create and manage their own online web stores without development effort or investment. Finally is a new referral engine. Now partner solutions and profiles will be syndicated across all of Microsoft digital properties and communications. And presumably this begins with the App Store. You make an App Store entry and you'll be anywhere else that you choose to be. So, I said finally, but I was wrong. Schuster talked about the Microsoft Professional Development Program created on OpenEdX on the Azure platform. And the idea is that with this platform and with ready-made content, partners can establish a profit-generating learning as a service business. They can amp up their education and training offerings. So MPD will provide curriculum and hands-on experience for professionals to grow their skills. So I thought altogether that's interesting stuff. No, Microsoft didn't give a lot of, as much licensing details as partners would have liked, but here are quite a few interesting things for partners to work with. Another thing that Schuster kind of concluded with was she quoted a blind AMI partners survey, which found that Microsoft partners received 19% higher margins for selling, deploying, and managing Microsoft cloud solutions than with our nearest competitor as compared to Amazon, Google, and Salesforce. So they were really piling on the incentives and the KPIs and the paybacks here. And I thought it made for a pretty compelling presentation.
Yeah, I think the part that I took notice of was some of those CSP stats. It'd be interesting to know how sort of valid CSPs feel they are, or partners feel they are. I mean, one of the things I took away was sort of some question about how successful CSP was in its first couple of years, or in the last year in particular, with CRM being added to it. I think there was a lot of pressure to move very quickly, and did that pressure or did that velocity result in progress or not. I think there's a little bit of question there from some people, but it makes perfect sense. Of course, they want to make the case that CSP is moving forward, and it is moving forward. I don't think there's any question that is the future of this model. And of course, that someone like Schuster is paying attention to partners' needs and adjusting programs and adjusting benefits and services accordingly to sort of respond to the things that they care about. To me, when you listen to that presentation, that's what I get out of it.
It does seem that, I think Microsoft is very good at lending an ear to its partners. Its cloud enthusiast partners are the ones, Microsoft hears them better, it appears to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think there's a lot to be said. We had an article earlier in the week from just before WPC, sort of preview article from Gus Krabenborg, and one of the points he made was actually that same one. Is it possible that programs for cloud partners are going to totally overtake programs for partners who are not totally committed to the cloud, as some are not in the dynamic space. I mean, you have plenty of those SMB ERPs who just the case hasn't been made to them that's where they need to go. Yeah, their businesses are still sort of operating. They're still generating margin. They're still, can keep the lights on and keep themselves and their companies employed without it. But, could that start to change?
Certainly could, I think. Okay. We had a few more stories this week. You want to let us in on those?
So let me cover a couple of them here. So let's see. So Project Madeira, soon to be known as, again, Dynamics 365 Financials for Business, I think if I have that right, was first announced as a US-only launch. We now know that it will also be launched in Canada with some Canada-specific regulatory abilities in it and some other standards. And so that's lumped into the 2016 release plans. We also found out that 4 European countries will get their own compatibility with Madeira in 2017, and that more countries will come along in probably 2018. So a little bit more of a roadmap forming there. And then in sort of non-WPC news, we had a little piece on a new EDI solution for the new Dynamics AX, also known as AX7. TrueCommerce launched their cloud-based EDI solution for that, and had some interesting insights onto the work they're doing there and the demand for new AX versus AX 2012 R3, which is still for a lot of companies the AX of choice, whether it's for implementations that are still coming online now or people who have been on AX for a while. Very very few of them have, I think, gone to AX7, despite the fact that Microsoft is saying that they have actually met all their goals so far in getting AX on Azure customers live and paying for it and so forth. I think there's still a huge percentage that have not yet. One other piece that we mentioned this week, the 2 well-known and veteran BI and reporting companies announced a new partnership. So Jet Reports and Target are partnering in the Benelux region with a new sort of combined BI practice in the region, headed by Joost Tigelaar, if I'm saying his name right, as a managing director for operations for both companies, both solutions in that region now. So an interesting and fairly, I guess, comprehensive partnership in that region.
Great. How about next week? What do you have coming up?
Couple things. I think there will be some more WPC related reaction to report on, some more thoughts there and plans. I think also trying to get a little more into the common data model and what that really is going to mean for what we know now as CRM, AX, the SMB products. And then the other thing to note is we have several great educational webcasts coming back next week. So we had a couple weeks without any live events, but those are coming back strong next week. We have educational sessions on AX and CRM next week that I will likely be hosting.
In case anybody was wondering, where do I find those great sessions? They're on the web page in the upper right. I believe you'll find a horizontal menu, and that's where you'll see webcasts. Is that correct?
Well, you want to look for live events for the live ones. Webcasts are the recorded events, so you will find those there later once they've been concluded and recorded and posted. So look for live events for information on those sessions that are happening next week.
I've got a couple of great case studies in the work. Those have taken a while to germinate. Great case studies always do. And then we'll see if we can get this done ASAP. We'll have a talk with Dynamics partners about the delay in Azure Stack till 2017 with a short list of pre-approved hardware vendors, just 3. So we'll ask partners, does AX 2012 R3 just live on as the go-to? Do they try to push for more AX on Azure? Are they worried? So that should be a pretty compelling piece.
Great. Looking forward to that one. All right, Dan, I think that about does it for this week. This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast, perhaps you are an ISV or a reseller with a product release or solution, perhaps you're a consultant with a case study or a unique slant on the Dynamics product space or news, don't hesitate to reach out and drop us a line. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor. You can reach me at my email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, assistant editor. You can reach me at dmorneau@msdynamicsworld. That's D as in Dan, M as in Matthew, AURN as in Nickel O at msdynamicsworld.com.
Until next time, we're MS Dynamics World signing off.